A whirlwind of blockbuster trades, some we did not see coming at all. The 2025 NFL trade deadline, which teams made the most moves and which teams missed the bus on today's NFL Six Pack.
This is Locked On's NFL Six Pack. 6 bold takes from 2 guys who just flat out know football. NFL experts Matt Williamson and Brian Peacock bring pure NFL talk. Great takes, no fluff. Just honest football talk. Crack one open. It's NFL Six Pack on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the NFL Six Pack. Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson with you. Love all of our everydayers that are hanging with us and into the new format. I do want to remind everybody that subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And a lot of you have to go over to YouTube to catch the show right now. Spotify users, apparently they don't know what to do with our new name and logo on the podcast because Spotify just dropped the feed and it's completely out of our hands. So apologize to those Spotify users who are having trouble finding the podcast and mosey over to YouTube or another platform to find us. That feed should be back up soon. It is completely out of our hands, and so we'll let you know when that is all good, and I'm sure you'll see the new NFL Six-Pack logo in your Spotify feeds very soon. But in the meantime, you can find us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe while you're there and drop us a line on YouTube. Get involved in our weekly mailbags, either on the YouTube comments or at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL on Twitter. And we've got some big-time trades to get into today. We're going to do our top 6 team, a top 5 teams that made the biggest changes, the most interesting trade deadline teams. And I think we're going to finish by talking about maybe some teams that did not do enough potentially, or maybe did too much at the trade deadline with the final bit of our 6-pack on today's program. We've got to, of course, start with the fire sale that was the New York Jets on Tuesday. And the biggest trade that we did not see coming, which was Sauce Gardner on his way to the Indianapolis Colts. We'll get into the Colts side of things as well, but starting with the Jets side of it. And when it comes to the New York Jets, Matt, and the trade deadline this year, the trades individually that they made, they got value for them. So if you're just grading, okay, you got 2 1s and A.D. Mitchell for Sauce Gardner, I think that's a win trade in a vacuum. But this is a team that just went through this exact process of a whole bunch of first-round picks, and Sauce was one of those. And they nailed those picks. But they're still in a place where they're selling off because they're not a good football team.
Right.
So what are you even supposed to do? How are you even supposed to sell to your Jets fan base that this is a good move, that things are going to be okay this time? Because you just did it and you couldn't possibly spend the picks better than they already did, and they still were a bad football team.
That I don't know. I mean, maybe you're just a bad organization and you always will be. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, what this is, the history of the Jets going back to Joe Namath is pretty strong for what I just said. Doesn't make it a bad process.
One open to that, by the way. There's a lot of Jets fans that might be cracking one open. There's the video of a kid at the game from a couple weeks ago after they lost, and he's like, "I hate this team." Just a young man. He's like, "Man, you felt bad for him." And then there was a dad breaking news to his children yesterday. They got home from school, and he's like, "Hey, they traded Sauce," and the kid starts crying. And like, "That's not it. They traded Quinnen Williams too." And the kid says, "I'm a Colts fan now." It's just unbelievable. And
I get it.
Where Jets fans are at with that. Even though, again, like, I think both these trades were a win for what you got back on the value side for the Jets side.
Well, you know me, I always bring things back to Steelers because I have to talk about them a ton, and they didn't do anything. And I do think a theme of this, and you brought it up yesterday, which really made me aware, was I think it's a pretty good year to be a seller. That there were so many teams, 20 teams or 25 maybe, that are considering adding a piece, So, I didn't think the Cowboys would add a piece, So I think the teams that sold got real value, and the Jets are the poster boy for that, because I don't think Sauce is worth what they got. Williams, I think, is a pretty fair deal. So I think it's really good process by New York. What they do with it, and your point about we've seen this show before, is extremely relevant, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't make a good trade because we're a terrible organization that didn't work before. You know, I mean, Wilson and Sauce and all those first round picks that were hits didn't help you win. Doesn't mean it's a bad idea. They got a wealth of picks for the next couple of years, including their own, which could be first overall, which I assume will be a quarterback or should be a quarterback. So from a Jets perspective, I love what they did. I mean, oh, by the way, you're not going to win anything going forward without Sauce, without Quinnen. I was shocked they didn't move Breece Hall.
It's funny because while I love those moves for the Jets as far as the value of those picks, I do question, okay, well, what's the plan? Like, what are you doing with the running back who's at the end of his contract? What's the point of that? You wanted
thoughts on that one.
You wanted a third and you said no to a fourth? That doesn't make sense to me. What's the best offer? Done. Okay, that's the best offer. We're going to do it. What is he going to do for you? The only argument I'll buy, which I still don't buy, is that it helps quarterback wise somehow to keep pieces on offense, because the reports were that Garrett Wilson was untouchable. And it's like, okay, Quinnen Williams is touchable, but Garrett Wilson is somehow untouchable.
Right.
You don't think that he wants to be traded right now, just like Breece Hall? And so it's hard to have a fire sale and to be like, oh yeah, but everyone else is going to buy in and we're going to be good. And this guy's untouchable, but this guy's not. If Sauce is not untouchable, if Quinn's not untouchable, how's Garrett Wilson untouchable? And how are you going to? And I get that. Okay, you want value for everybody,
right?
But you're going to say, oh, we're not going to trade Breece Hall because we didn't get a second, third round pick. We're not going to trade Jermaine Johnson coming off an Achilles because we want a second round pick. And clearly teams are like, no. And so
not worth it.
Only did those other deals. So now you're in a spot where, cool, you did that. And now you get nothing for these other pieces, but you're rebuilding. So what good is it to have Garrett Wilson and just let him toil with bad quarterbacks and no defense?
Right. I know. I 100% hear you. And the reason I wanted to bring the Hall thing up is we just talked through it on Locked On Dynasty, because I didn't know any of that. They wanted a third, the Chiefs offered a fourth stuff until we talked about it on the air. And I kind of opened by saying, you couldn't get a fifth or sixth round pick for Hall. And then those guys interrupted me. They're like, they got offered a fourth. I'm like, well, why would they take that? What are you doing?
Remember last week, our matchmaking episode?
Yeah.
Breece Hall to the Chiefs for a fourth. That was the deal.
Gold.
Do it.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
And then I started talking.
Said no.
And then I started talking through it because it's Dynasty. We're talking about, Hall's long-term fantasy value. And my thoughts were, if they're not going to do that, I bet they franchise him. Is that smart? I mean, I guess it's okay. I do like the Mitchell addition. I think he's really talented. He seems like a bit of a knucklehead, and he got totally buried in Indy. But he's going to be their number 2 for the rest of the year. You at least get this guy on the field. That's not a nothing addition.
No,
and they got the pick.
That's my favorite part of this deal is AD Mitchell has gotten, I think, 25 snaps since he fumbled that football going into the end zone. So clearly the Colts were out on him, and he's too talented to not deserve a fresh start. So I love that addition as just a throw in for a guy who's starting caliber talent wise. Is his head screwed on? Will he ever be good? I don't know, but he's a throw in, and you already got just the two ones by itself was enough. And then you get a talented wide receiver who is in need of a fresh start, and you get to give him that fresh start in New York. So I love that aspect of the trade as well for both the Jets and for AD Mitchell himself.
If I trusted the Jets, I love what they did yesterday. I mean, except for moving Hall.
Yeah. Well, and so this is what's interesting. Let's move on from the Jets to the Colts side of this thing next. And I think there's one word that really sums up where the Colts are, where the Jets are, that kind of brings all of this together from what we just talked about and what these teams are doing going forward, and why the trade deadline was the way it was for the Jets and the Colts. Next. Today's episode of the NFL Six Pack is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. NBA season is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game, you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's the one making the push. And of course, we know that everyone makes a run in the NBA and still find all the game lines and all the prop bets and all the weekly NFL lines, all the prop bets there, season long props, player props, build your own parlays. There is no end to the amount of really any kind of action you can get in on in the sporting world at FanDuel. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Indianapolis Colts, clearly Chris Ballard, aggressive, going all in, making the biggest deal at the trade deadline for Sauce Gardner to add to a defense that's already playing really well. I talked about how Lou Anarumo was the big winner of this football season before the trade deadline, and he didn't even have Sauce Gardner yet. So you pair Sauce Gardner with Charvarius Ward on the other side. You got Kenny Moore. You got Nick Cross in the secondary. Is a good young player having the best year of his career. Super, physically talented guy. It's taken a little while to develop. Had some ups and downs. This is a team that is clearly going for it. And the reason they can do what they're doing right now, Matt, is because of their quarterback, because they got a quarterback.
Right.
And they don't need to spend those first round picks that they traded away on a quarterback because they're going to re-up their guy. Right. And so congratulations to Daniel Jones, who essentially just got himself a nice little multi-year contract yesterday. He just hasn't signed it yet, right? That's going to be something that happens in the offseason for Daniel Jones with the Indianapolis Colts. So that has become a marriage there. They basically put a ring on his finger, and Daniel Jones is the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, a team that is now going forward with 7 wins heading into week 10 of the NFL season and a superstar defensive piece coming back in trade, even though it was an overpay.
Yes, it's a big overpay to me, though. And I don't think this is the same as if the Bills or Chiefs would have done it. Like, I like where the Colts are at, but what I'm saying is if we did power ranks 1 year from now, November 5th of 2026, and I told you the Colts are 18th, I don't think anybody would bat an eye. Like the Bills and Chiefs aren't going to be 18th because of their quarterback. I like Daniel Jones. I think they're going to extend Daniel Jones. I just don't know that they're going to pick. Both these picks are going to be super late in the first round, is my point. And you might need them a lot more than you think you did a year from now. Not necessarily for a quarterback, but for something, whatever. Left tackle, I don't know, whatever. If it was Mitchell and a 1, I'd be like, that's a good deal for both teams. Mitchell and 2 1s, like, wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot, and they had to pay a lot, and clearly the Jets were asking a lot. They were asking for overpays from everybody. They got a couple of them, and some other deals weren't done because they did not get those overpays. And when it comes to the Colts in this build, and it's also a sliding scale. Like, we're grading the trade today. We don't know if that's going to be the 25th pick or the 32nd pick either, which is that could be the difference in a truly first round talent, or maybe not a first round talent. Like, if the Colts go win Super Bowls, they're fine with it, and they gave up late picks, right? And it starts to make the trade look a little bit different because you're potentially 1 or 2 picks away from being a high second round pick rather than a first round pick. But right now, it's a quote unquote shiny first round pick. So we still can't fully grade it until we see the completion there of what those picks even are that were given up. Are the Colts that good that they're going to go win the AFC Championship game this year? They're trying to get there, and this helps them.
He helps,
But are they that good? And so that's going to be really interesting down the road. And I think for Chris Ballard, he was a guy that probably felt he was on the hot seat coming into the year, right? And so for him, he's like, well, look, I was going to not be able to spend these picks in 2027 anyway, because I was going to be fired. And now we're winning games, so let's go win more games. Mm-hmm. And so I have even the opportunity to be employed by this team in 2027. And again, it comes back to the quarterbacks here. The Jets are going to be quarterback shopping, and that could be in 2027 as well. So getting that extra first round pick from the Cowboys is super interesting.
Yes.
Because we got the second in 2026 and the 2027 first rounder from the Cowboys. Maybe 2027 is the year to go get that quarterback. And it's shaping up to be like a pretty star-studded draft class. Now, we say that a lot, and it's still a ways out, so we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. But most teams think that most experts think that 2027 is going to be a pretty darn big time draft. And I wonder if new coach, new regime, stopgap quarterback in 2026 is the way to go for the Jets, and they attack that quarterback class of 2027 instead. Or at least they know they don't have to go crazy and trade all those picks they just got for that one quarterback in 2026, unless the right guy falls to them.
Yeah, and they may even be picking first overall. Who knows? I mean, they're not going to win a lot more. Last notes on the Colts, though. I do applaud the aggressiveness and going for it. And Ballard has been accused of never having like A talent. He's got a lot of B pluses, a lot of Bs, a lot of second round pick type guys, depth. And coincidentally, the Steelers just played the Colts, so we did a deep dive on the Colts. And really going into that Steelers-Colts game, I said over and over, I'm like, this team is loaded. There's only one position I think that is below average right now, and that's corner, especially outside corner. And so they must have felt the same way, and they have defensive scheme change with Anarumo. They want to play more man. So I get it. I just think they gave up too much.
Let's move on to the Dallas Cowboys here, who are a couple of games under 500. They lost to the Cardinals and in prime time, and they did not look like a team that should be going for it. But Jerry Jones had hinted that they had some deals ready to go, and it turns out they did make a couple of deals, added 2 front 7 defenders. Logan Wilson, we talked about yesterday. It happened earlier before the deadline, and then coming back with the big haymaker, and Quinnen Williams on his way to the Dallas Cowboys for a second rounder in 2026, a first rounder in 2027, and I think they wanted Mozzie Smith out as much as anything. Like, you have to take Mozzie Smith if we're going to
get him out of here, right?
And so now you've got another defensive tackle who they already got one from the Dallas Cowboys in an earlier trade. And of course, we have to talk about what that total deal ends up looking like with the Parsons, if you did a Parsons for Quinnen swap with all the draft picks. But the fascinating thing about this too is the Jets are going to get the Cowboys 2027 first, and not the one that they had gotten from the Packers, which I think most people think is probably the more valuable pick.
The better one. Yeah.
And so again, good on the Jets for getting value for these trades as they blow up their defense. Dallas Cowboys. Now, this is Quinnen Williams is going to be around for a while. And by the way, you can't even factor in cost savings in this, because who's going to get a new contract next offseason? Quinnen Williams.
Oh, you think? I didn't even think of that angle.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not going to fight you on that, but I mentioned I just did Locked On Dynasty with Marcus Mosher, who does Locked On Cowboys. And we had a good Quinnen conversation before we hit record. And he didn't think that was the case with the contract. But I hadn't thought of that angle, but we just know that's how it often goes.
He has 2 years left, right? And what star player gets to the last year of their contract?
Right. But the way Marcus looked at it.
So even if he doesn't get a deal done, and who knows, maybe this gets ugly like the Micah Parsons thing, because as soon as a star player doesn't have guaranteed money left, they're going to ask for a new contract.
Mm-hmm. So, and usually when they go to a new team, they know that the new team loves them.
Yeah. And the old team's the one that paid the signing bonus. So, now you have no guarantees tied into your new football team. I don't know if they're going to get a deal done next offseason, but 100% chance that Quinnen Williams' agent asks for a new contract and tries to do some big time extension with the Cowboys.
So the way Marcus described it to me, which made me fonder and fonder of the deal, was he thinks they're very much married to Dak Prescott, and they don't see a very large, window for Dak. He's obviously up in age. That this is really a move to try to win it all next year. Lamb's under contract. You now have Clark and Williams. Your whole O-line is locked up. Dak should still be as good as he is now, which is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And you now have a wealth of picks basically to spend on defense, he thought. Depending what you do with Pickens, I don't see any other needs really on offensive side of the ball. Everything else is pretty much locked up. You can run that side back. You could probably get Pickens at a reasonable number either way, and then just draft defense like crazy. Back 7 guys in particular. He had mentioned something you and I brought up too, that they really, really like Ezerike too, the BC defensive end, which I totally get, So from that perspective, not like everyone just assumes it's for now. Teams trading for these players, they think they can win it. They're crazy. Didn't they watch a game last week? Well, maybe they can win it next year.
Yeah, and so probably smart not dangling this year's first if they continue to pile up some losses. I don't know how much better they expect the 2027 2026 team to be than the 2025 team to be the rest of the season this year. So if they're not like awesome the rest of the way, they're probably not going to be awesome next year either.
Yeah,
It's gonna be mostly the same group, and we don't know what's going on with Pickens yet. One thing I do like, so I think overall value-wise, I think they probably hurt themselves, the Cowboys did, by not being unwilling to trade this year's first. I don't know if that was, if the Jets asked for the 2027 first, but essentially a future first is worth less than a this year's first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you're talking to a team that's sub 500, as the Cowboys are. Would just this year's first have gotten it done? Because essentially, if you talk about the future first, so it's kind of like,
and you sold the Packers for
100% this way, but it's essentially it's worth one round less. So a future first is worth a this year's second. A future second is worth a this year's third kind of idea.
I got the hunch that the Cowboys this year first was off the table.
Right. And so I get that, but is a second this year, first next year, essentially the value of 2 seconds? Is that the way the Cowboys are looking at this thing?
Probably.
And could a first this
especially
year,
because the Packers and they expect it to be late.
And even if you want to not trade this year's first, is it still more valuable in the long run if you would have just traded this year's first, and then you have that 2027 first, and then you'd have to give up a second round pick, or maybe it was a third or fourth round pick to go instead. So that's just, I don't know how the negotiations went, who asked for what, which teams were doing what. I assume that Jets were okay getting a 2027 first, and it actually ended up giving them a little bit of a bump anyway, because they're not.
Jets aren't going to win next year anyway.
Right. And here's the thing, though, that the Dallas Cowboys can do, and I don't know if they're going to do this, but I think smart organizations can look at the way they do things and be like, look, okay, so we kept our first round pick this year, and we're going to utilize that to add more draft picks back to recoup. So the fact that we didn't trade the first round pick this year, it wasn't to spend that pick on the highest player we can at the time. We're going to try to trade back and get a second round pick back and kind of recoup some of the value because we didn't trade that asset. So I wonder if that's part of the plan as well for the Dallas Cowboys. And we'll see if that comes to fruition over the course of the draft process, and and add yourself more picks because of this piece that you didn't trade away that allows you to do that.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. Marcus mentioned the safety from Ohio State. He said they're in love with this guy, that they would do whatever they could to go get him. But they traded their second this year in this deal, and they traded their third for Pickens. So I don't know if they have any day 2 picks at all.
If you're unwilling to trade a first round pick because you're going to spend it on a safety, fire everybody. That would be
yeah.
Doing it, right? That's the reason. Right. Yeah, I don't know about that. So we'll see. But again, that's something that safeties tend to fall a little bit. So what if you end up with 12, trade back to 17, get an extra pick, and still get that safety?
Now you're talking, right?
But again, so we have to see how these things go and where these draft picks end up to really fully evaluate it right now. Curious how this is going to go for the Dallas Cowboys. To be honest with you, don't love it for them. Colts was even more of an overpay, I think. I like it a little bit better because at least they're a team that could go win that thing potentially right now because of a deal like this. And for the Jets, winners in a vacuum, feel bad for their fans.
Yes, it's going to be a long couple years, but I do think it was a seller's market.
Let's talk about the Seahawks, the Jaguars, who were active at the trade deadline, and maybe some teams that missed the bus at the 2025 trade deadline next. Today's episode of the NFL Six Pack is brought to you by Built. And I know you're already paying rent, right? And nobody likes doing it, but if you must, you might as well get something for it. That's where Built comes in. Built is changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards you can actually use. When you pay rent through Built, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed toward hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. But Built isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. Maybe you're going out and grabbing food at your favorite local restaurant, heading to the gym, or getting some coffee. You're still earning rewards with Built. Built has made everyday life feel more rewarding, from your neighborhood to your travel plans. So turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. Make sure you use that link so they know we sent you. Seattle Seahawks, aggressive. And I thought they were fine at wide receiver. Cooper Kupp injured. Torrey Horton comes out, a couple of touchdown. Nice deep threat rookie that is developing for them. Jackson Smith-Njigba has been doing everything for him on offense. Sam Darnold having a phenomenal year at quarterback for the Seahawks. But they said, no, we want to be even more explosive. We want to add more speed to this offense. And traded was it a 4th and a 5th round pick?
Yeah.
Yes, 4th and 5th round picks in this coming draft for Rashid Shaheed from the New Orleans Saints. Very interesting move here for the Seattle Seahawks, who are already a better passing team than a run team.
They might be the best passing team in the league. I mean, by the numbers, they're right at the top of the league. And any advanced numbers you look at, and I don't think they needed them, to be honest with you. I think this is a bonus prize that when you're doing battle with these NFC teams, the Lions, the Eagles, or whatever, you might be real happy you have them in the playoffs. So that type of thing. This is a big, not a big swing, but this is we think can win the whole thing type of move. Kupp's hard to count on. I think they found a steal in Horton. But I also think it's just Kubiak going from the Saints to the Seahawks saying, I have an opportunity to work with this guy again, throw him in the mix. Let's do it. Yeah.
Clearly he knows the guy who's like, yeah, if we can get him, let's go get him. And so, interesting deal. I like this deal. It's not super expensive, but it is a couple of picks, so if you're the Seahawks,
good for the Saints.
You draft your 3rd round selection, then you sit around and you're like, shoot, we don't have a pick until round 6 now. So that is kind of tough back-to-back selections when you're drafting. And I'm not familiar with the Seahawks. Maybe they have a couple extra 4ths or 5ths. I don't know about that. And then the Saints made another trade as well, selling off Trevor Penning to the Los Angeles Chargers, one of the last deals that came down through the deadline. It's so hard to add offensive linemen, and clearly with the injuries, the Chargers had that need. And I don't know how much of an upgrade Trevor Penning's going to be. He's kind of more guard than tackle these days, but they have that need at tackle with the alt injury now. And so 6th round pick going to the Saints, who I think could have done a lot more.
Yeah, Kamara, and I don't have a problem holding Olave or the Dolphins holding Waddle. I think those guys are more for the future. But
I think you put all those guys: Waddle, Olave, Garrett Wilson. Obviously Garrett Wilson's done the most of those guys so far in the NFL and has the bigger contract. But if you are going to build something, your next quarterback will be glad that person's on your team. So I do buy that in.
Yeah, I get that part. Yeah, with all 3 of those dudes.
Yeah, young enough that they're part of the next thing.
Yeah. And they're under contract and they're talented and they're good players.
Mm-hmm. How about the Jacksonville Jaguars here? And maybe the Saints are kind of in that bucket for me, to be honest with you. The next bucket we're going to talk about teams that didn't do enough. But they're always in that bucket for me. They just live in that bucket for me.
Right. Get rid of Demario Davis and everybody. Yeah.
We talked about the Jacksonville Jaguars trade yesterday, bringing in a wide receiver. And it's odd for a team that has back-to-back first-round guys. And I know that you don't go trade for Jakobi Meyers because your rookie wide receiver's out for 3 weeks either, right? Like this has to be something more than that for Jakobi Meyers. As the Las Vegas Raiders finally trade Jakobi Meyers, he's wanted out for a long time, to the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 4th and 6th round pick. We talked about this trade a little bit yesterday because it went down before we recorded. And unfortunately, the Sauce deal happened like the second we were done recording. This massive Sauce trade happened. What do you think about where the Jacksonville Jaguars are right now post-trade deadline?
I think it's a good haul for the Raiders. I think was very likely to go, and a couple suitors, including the Steelers, from what I understand. But I thought it was a little peculiar, but I think there's a couple things of note here. Brian Thomas got banged up at the end of the last game. As of Wednesday, we don't know exactly how bad that is, but he's not going on IR. It sounds like Hunter's only going to miss 3 more games and then come right back of IR. I think Brenton Strange is due to come back, and he got a ton of targets. I don't think Parker Washington's a bad young player, and they still have Denami Brown. So I don't think they're in a bad shape here. However, this offense, remember, comes from Tampa, really is a over-the-middle, dirty work, in-breaking routes, and Brian Thomas Jr. is not adapted to that well at all. And they lead the league in drops this year. They led the league in drops last year. And just watching Jags games, there's a lot of receivers, and Hunter's understandable, that just seem like they don't know what to do. So I just think they wanted a reliable guy that catches the ball on 3rd down.
Yeah, just a reliable dude that you can count on. And to be honest with you, he's kind of a bigger, older version of Parker Washington.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Brenton Strange is a tight end, is going to be used over the middle of the field. Jakobi Meyers does his best work over the middle of the field. Will catch the ball. I think I think it's almost a statement of like, okay, we have a rookie that's not really fully a wide receiver yet. We have this other outside guy, super talented, but we want a guy who can win dirty and catch the stinking ball over the middle of the field. I think is what they're trying to say here.
I also think there's value to having the veteran in the room. Like this guy is a professional. He'll teach Hunter. Maybe he'll get Thomas back on track. Like, again, I use too many Steeler examples, but like when Antonio Brown was a lunatic, they had all these young guys like Martavis Bryant, and Juju was like 18 years old. They had Darius Hayward-Bay, who was just the leader in the room that had been around the block and kind of kept those guys in check. Like there's some value to that kind of stuff too.
Let's go rapid fire a little bit and a couple thoughts here and some teams that didn't do enough. I want to talk about the Chicago Bears getting one in before the deadline. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka goes from the Cleveland Browns to the Chicago Bears, and it kind of like offensive line shopping. It's a little bit harder to find those defensive linemen, those edge guys. Teams want a lot for him. We saw the guys that did get traded go for a lot on Tuesday. And so I think the Bears were like, all right, well, this is basically the only guy we can get for a sixth rounder or less. And so they sent a sixth, get a seventh back with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, which I don't think it's an earth-shattering move, but it's a need for the Chicago Bears. They get that deal done. And let's see, there was a couple of other.
Real quick on that one, Obendengo, I kill his name. I got hurt last week too. The defensive end they just paid. So maybe it's just a fill in for the rest of the year type of move. The Browns were on my list of should have done more, though.
I'm with you. I think Browns. I think the
I have Browns and Titans.
New Orleans Saints and the Titans. I would put, I had the Raiders. I would put in that bucket as well.
Yeah.
Was there no other calls for any other players on those teams? And were you asking for too much for the guys you were trying to trade away? Like, who's not really a part of the thing? Get some more draft picks and build that roster.
Yep. Again, my should have done more teams for Tennessee and the Browns. I definitely think the Raiders are a good one. And some of the, Breece Hall should have went. And I also would put Hendrickson on that list. Should have moved them.
Yep. Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals and the Saints live on my list of what the heck are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
So now Hendrickson can fake an injury the rest of the year. And
right.
What's the point? Like, did you get a second round offer? You said no.
Then you're crazy.
You should be fired, but they're can't be fired because he's been there for 25 years and it's just a joke. It's a joke at this point for the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, that was one where it was like we even stopped talking about it. Like people stopped bringing him up at the trade deadline too. It's like, oh, they want to run for him. It's like, well, I already see how this is going to go. The Bengals aren't going to make a trade, are they? I'm like, nope, they're not going to make a trade.
Not.
They did not. And so Trey Hendrickson still hostage for the rest of this season, and he'll sign somewhere else. Unless they throw the franchise tag and make this real ugly with him. I can't believe that wasn't part of his new deal to come back and play this year was the no franchise tag thing. And then they'll get maybe a comp third unless they sign some guys and they won't get anything for him. So you could add a second round pick potentially. And you didn't get nothing. So good job, Bengals.
I think we mentioned it yesterday, though. I mean, Joe Goodberry's a guy I really trust that covers the Bengals. He thinks they're just going to franchise him. And it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, nightmare. Feel bad. Like I said that the day the news came out.
Yeah,
like, there has to be a no tag clause here, and there wasn't.
I think Trey screwed that up.
Yeah, somebody screwed that up. There we go. That was the trade deadline. That was. Let us know what you think. Get involved in this week or next week or any old mailbag at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Drop a comment or a question on YouTube. Subscribe while you're there. Matt and I back tomorrow. Right here on the NFL. Almost said the Peacock and Williamson on the NFL 6-pack.